Iguana mía, ¿para dónde vas? Que voy para el puerto de Soledad. Que será mentira, será verdad lo que anda diciendo la gente allá. Que en este puerto no hay novedad, y si la hubiera poca será. A la ritangea, a la gea, iguana tan fea, que se sube al palo para que la vea. Mueve la patita como que patea, mueve la manita como que manea, y se tira al suelo para que la vean. Mueve la patita como que patea, y la caderita como caderea. Dicen que la iguana muerde, pero yo digo que no. Yo agarré una por la cola y nomás la lengua sacó.
Y estoy muy contenta de recibir a todos los alcaldes y alcaldesas de Bloomberg CityLab. Bienvenidos a la Ciudad de México.
I'm very happy to receive all of the
more cities are dreaming big and delivering solutions.
to Mexico
Mexico
City.
City's bold innovation is helping lead the way, making it the perfect host for our 11th Bloomberg CityLab Summit.
Mayors in Latin America are working to build stronger, healthier, and more prosperous cities. In Mexico City, utopias have transformed public space and provided access to sports, cultural, and wellness resources for underserved citizens.
Las utopías son un
The utopias are an innovative project, the best of social
In Rosario,
urban.
Argentina, redeveloping urban land for farming has created economic opportunity and increased access to fresh produce.
Con esta iniciativa contribuimos a la seguridad alimentaria y nutricional de las familias, apoyando a más de 400 productores agrícolas, de los cuales un 65% son mujeres.
In Las Condes, Chile, an urban monitoring center is making the city safer and more responsive to emergencies.
Usar datos para adaptarse rápidamente a los desafíos de la gestión urbana puede producir resultados increíbles.
In Maipú, Chile, they're enabling youth-led projects to combat climate change.
Son en especial los jóvenes quienes más conciencia tienen de la importancia de enfrentar la crisis climática con acciones concretas y quienes más capacidad tienen de desarrollar y soñar proyectos de gran impacto en la comunidad.
And in Recife, Brazil, a digital platform is helping residents find vital medications throughout the city.
Is at ter medicamento. The new platform was important to guarantee that thousands of people will know where their medicines are available and where they can take them in the city.
Demonstrate just some of the ways Latin America is leading the world in public innovation in cities. And they're not the only ones. Bloomberg Philanthropies works in over 700 cities worldwide.
Welcome to CityLab.
For 11 years, this summit has been a place for urban leaders to share and spread solutions to some of the most pressing challenges we face. Together, we can help move the world forward. Bienvenidos and welcome to CityLab.
Please welcome to the stage the CEO of Bloomberg Philanthropies, Patty Harris.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 11th annual Bloomberg CityLab. What a great start to the morning. Let's give another round of applause to the Expanded Memory Dance Project. It's a little hard to follow that, but I will do my best, okay? We are thrilled to be here in Mexico, where Bloomberg Philanthropies has been working for more than a decade on issues ranging from public health to supporting the arts, partnering with cities, and protecting our environment. And our latest win came early this month when the Mexican government created the largest marine park in the Gulf of Mexico, and we're so proud to have played a role. It's great to have a win at the national level, but at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we're also big believers in what can get done at the local level. Whether you're improving transit options, creating more affordable housing, or making neighborhoods safer, everyone here is doing essential work, and we know just how meaningful that work can be. That's true for Mike Bloomberg, who served 3 terms as mayor of New York City, for me, joining him at City Hall, and for many others on the Bloomberg Philanthropies team who also worked in local government. And that includes a member of our board of directors and the former mayor of Miami, Manny Diaz, who is here with us today. At Bloomberg Philanthropies, we put cities at the heart of so much of our work because we've seen how cities can be incredible laboratories for innovation. They can act more nimbly than national governments, and local leaders are directly accountable for solving so many of the challenges that are impacting our lives. Cities are also continuing to grow rapidly. More than 56% of the world's population now lives in urban areas, which means mayors and their teams really need to deliver more and better services than ever before. And that's an unprecedented opportunity to improve millions, even billions of lives. And Bloomberg CityLab is all about helping leaders seize that opportunity. The good news is that everyone in this room and cities worldwide have a lot to learn from one another. Despite their differences, cities often face similar issues, and they can benefit from many of the same solutions. During the Bloomberg years at City Hall in New York, our team was never shy about stealing ideas from others. When we created our 311 system, giving New Yorkers one single number to call for city services and information, we drew on pioneering efforts in Baltimore and other cities. Our bus rapid transit system, which made key routes and more efficient, came from a great example that Bogota was setting. And I remember traveling to Paris to meet with the mayor about the city's successful bike share program, inspiring our own network. Those ideas came from other cities, but we made them our own, and they've had an extraordinary impact. For example, over the last 20 years, New Yorkers have reached out to 311 more than 500 million times. And we're proud to say that other cities borrowed ideas from us too. Let me give you a couple of examples. First, our smoking ban. Before Mike was elected mayor, Many of the city's bars and restaurants and other workplaces were full of cigarette smoke, which created terrible health risks for workers and for customers. The smoking ban we passed in 2002 changed that, and it was a huge reason why, by the time we left office, New Yorkers' life expectancy increased by 3 full years. We can clap. The work we did and the data we collected gave other leaders a model for addressing the harms of tobacco in their own cities. We saw a huge wave of governments follow our lead, and now our team at Bloomberg Philanthropies continues to oversee a global tobacco program focused on making more progress. And today, I'm glad to say, these smoke-free laws cover some 4 billion people in 85 countries, including here in Mexico. A second example is Plan YC, our landmark plan for cutting New York's carbon footprint and fighting climate change. Driven by projections that the city would gain 1 million residents by 2030, we created a roadmap to prepare and put environmental sustainability at its core. We laid out more than 120 ambitious projects and policies, like planting 1 million new trees, cleaning up brownfields, expanding access to public transit, and improving buildings' energy efficiency. And those innovations helped cut carbon emissions by 13% in just 6 years, while creating the cleanest city air in more than half a century. And it sparked other cities globally to embrace their own in tackling climate change. The concept that cities can learn from one another may sound like simple common sense, but in practice, it doesn't happen often enough or fast enough. It's not always clear where cities go to learn from one another and what they're doing, or how they can adapt to the work for themselves. That's why we make spreading successful ideas a priority for our work at the Foundation. We've created networks like the Partnership for Healthy Cities, a group of more than 70 global cities sharing and implementing policies for improving public health. We've helped cities create programs that cut emissions, improve our air quality, and fight climate change, like through the C40 cities. And as you'll hear more about tomorrow, we've led a global ideas competition called the Mayor's Challenge that identifies some of the best and boldest solutions to city issues and helps them spread. At last year's CityLab at Washington, D.C., we built on all that work by launching the Bloomberg Cities Idea Exchange to give city leaders the blueprints, the case studies, and technical assistance to understand proven ideas and adapt them to their own cities. Today, I'm pleased to highlight an initial set of powerful ideas which Bloomberg Philanthropies will help cities implement. These 11 ideas address a wide variety of challenges and are backed by exciting results, and they all have the potential to make a great impact. They include ideas that tackle air pollution with data from low-cost air sensors, cut emissions by retrofitting older public buildings, serve more sustainable school lunches by supplying local produce, prevent corruption by digitizing permits and building business licenses, improve economic outcomes by providing food vendors with solar-powered refrigeration, tackle student learning loss through summer school programs, respond to community crises by matching residents in need with neighbors who can help, reduce homelessness by repurposing shipping containers for temporary shelters, prevent traffic deaths by establishing strong city speed limits, improve waste management in partnership with informal waste collectors, and finally, an all-time Bloomberg favorite, bolster public health by implementing smoke-free laws. We believe in each of these ideas, and we want to help city leaders replicate the programs. So please check out our website at bloomberg.org. We're also interested in learning about new ideas that can have the potential to spread. So get in touch with us, and perhaps they'll end up in a future round of Bloomberg Cities on the Ideas Exchange. We really can't wait to work together and put great ideas on steroids globally. Speaking of great ideas and working together, it's now my pleasure to introduce a terrific partner of Bloomberg Philanthropies and a leader who is no stranger to great ideas. As mayor of Itapulapu, she established the Utopias, an incredible community centers featuring colorful parks, sports facilities, and cultural and educational activities. She invested in public amenities, including 13 Olympic-sized swimming pools, seemingly overnight. She brightened her city with nearly 7,000 murals and brought extraordinary cable car line to the skies, the longest in Latin America, among many other major achievements, which I'm not going to list today. On October 5th, she became the new mayor of Mexico City, with ambitions to take these and other accomplishments citywide. On behalf of Bloomberg Philanthropies, I want to thank her for her partnership, including our newest work together to tackle air pollution, which we're launching today. And from everyone here at Bloomberg CityLab, we're so grateful for welcoming us to her city and for sharing her thoughts and perspectives. Please welcome the Mayor of Mexico City, Clara Brugada.
Hello, my dear friends. First, I'd like to welcome you to this beautiful city of Mexico. It is an honor for us to see that this wonderful organization can have again CityLab in Mexico City. I'd like to greet the organizers, Patricia Harris, James Anderson, the Bloomberg team altogether. Let's give them a hand. And I would like to especially welcome the mayors of the world who have gathered here in Mexico City, have come to meet here. I'd like to welcome the academicians, those who are specialists in the field of cities. I'd like to congratulate them for holding this meeting. This meeting's objective is to have an exchange of experience, renovations, projects, all those things that our cities need. Our cities across the world have to be more resilient and more innovating, more fair, because at the end of the day, cities from their origin have searched to have a better community, to have a better space. So those of us who rule over the big cities in the world, we have to face this task. We have to face this responsibility. So welcome to Mexico City. I'd like to tell you that in this country, in our country, we're going through historic moments. Recently, the Mexican people elected the first lady president of the country, Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo.
Para nosotros es de vital importancia.
For us, it is very significant. We call this the time of women, both in the country and across the world. We have lots of things to do. It is a landmark in Mexico's history. We've been a republic for 200 years. For the first time, a woman is the president in this country. This means very significant way. This wonderful city with more than 9 million inhabitants. When we speak of a metropolitan population, it is 22 million inhabitants. We speak of a country that has 128 million inhabitants, and 10% of those people live in cities. And we, the society in Mexico City, is creating the largest GDP in the country. We have the federal entity with the highest level of development in science and technology. 50% of scientific research in Mexico takes place in Mexico City. This city has become the capital of transformation. It is a global, cosmopolitan, and diverse, full of rights, freedoms, and a great economy. Our city has no borders, like many other cities in the world. Therefore, the response that we have to give are not just circumscribed to the administration borders. The second chapter of administration of Mexico City calls for a metropolitan governance. That is to say, we cannot think of things such as air, water, security without having a metropolitan vision. This is why we believe that this new chapter in Mexico City has as its priority solutions in areas that we share the land and the set of problems whose solution is a metropolitan. I became the mayor of Mexico City 10 days ago, so I'm very happy to welcome you. I had to welcome a city that had made much progress. This city has the highest public investment in sustainable mobility. There was a broad network of social welfare through social programs. There was a political policy focused on technological innovation to have a more efficient government. 300 community spaces were built where the people have access to science, culture, technology. There were new schools at the mid-education level with more than 50,000 students who did not have a school to go to before. So we are building, as we call it, the second floor of the transformation of Mexico City. The new government that we are starting, from my point of view, one of the most important perspectives is gender equality. So with women, we are creating a large plan of substantive equality in Mexico City. When we say this is the time of women, we do not only speak of the political representation. No, the time of women, the age of women, the era of women means public policies that put at the center fighting the great gender inequalities we have to face. One of the essential tasks in the city is the creation of the public care system in Mexico City. This is very important. It is a new way of looking at a city, of thinking of a city, for the urban designers to take into account what is the meaning of care, for care to stop being only a private task, for it to become infrastructure, public resources, for cities to have access to large infrastructures where girls and boys are taken care of. We're going to create a very powerful infrastructure that has more than 200 centers for child care and development. And also, we will have houses for the elderly, centers for the people who are handicapped, centers that will take care of the daily work such as laundering and relaxing. What it used to be cooking and washing for taking hours and hours to do that will become a public responsibility. It will become the right of people living in the city, the obligation, the duty of the government, because now we have to implement the public care system in Mexico City. Another topic, security. In this city, it was possible to decrease almost 60% of high-impact crimes. This second floor, our building, the second floor, means creating territory for peace and equality. That is, to have models of proximity close to the areas where people live. This means do without a model, take up a model of facing the cause of crime, and thus facing the criminal activities, situations that lead to violence. We are ready to make Mexico City a very safe city by building peace and equality in this large, great city. Also, mobility. 78% of people living in this city move in public transportation. All our resources have to go to the creation
con los grandes temas de movilidad sustentable.
And improving the problems, improving the mobility. We will continue with the cable bus, and these are helping move people, those people who live in the highest parts. 5 lines of the cable which we are going to continue using in Mexico City. We will continue investing as a state policy in electromobility. We want Mexico City to have to be very strong in mobility through sustainable actions. We will continue to build a sustainable infrastructure. We want people living in the city to be able to enjoy being with their family instead of being in a public transportation all the time. So one of the many resources will be invested in mobility, apart from the fact that we will become the city with the largest infrastructure for cycling, apart from the fact that people will be walking, and we will be promoting non-motor mobility. Today, many of you will go to innovative impacts that are called the utopias. Just as you say utopias, this city is going through a great transformation of the public space. I was the mayor of Iztapalapa. It has the highest number of inhabitants in this city. We developed a space to change a public space, the utopias. What is a utopia? Well, dreams, goals. But the project wants to turn these utopias into some reality. These are large projects with infrastructure for sports, for recreation, for culture, for welfare, for care. We will be building 100 lovely utopias across the city. You will be visiting them today, and I'd love to talk about it with you tonight. You have there the best of social urbanism. It's not social fora. It's not a center for sports. It is a total overall view, because society is made up of many actions and many things. So utopians will be present in those areas that are needed in this society. So utopias will be installed for the population of this city in less than 15 minutes have access to a transforming public space. Utopias are our bet for equality, to have justice and fairness in this city. I come from peripheral areas. Therefore, one of our objectives is for Mexico's periphery not to be equal to abandonment and inequality, but areas that will allow for development, economy, and growth for our population. We will also continue with the great projects of technological innovation. In this city, we are working on a very important innovation project with the digital agency to that end, and we have accomplished big things. We want a big digital government, an open government, a government that promotes connectivity and equality, and for technology to be attainable for everybody. Here we cannot speak of sustainability of the environment, of all these topics, if we do not have a vision of the future. It has to be very clear for us that getting ready to face the consequences of the climate change force us to implement programs. We are going to be facing the challenge of water, and we will be facing it under a perspective of modifying the model of the use of water in the city. We want to change the millions, take advantage of the millions of liters of water that we lose. We want to make use of the subsoil, and within 20 years to have water balance in the city. In the 6 years that we will be in the government of the city, we will have to work to reach water balance, to defend the water forest, to understand that water is a human right. It is not a commodity. Water is defending nature in its management model. This is one of the most important works we have to do. We have to look at it from a metropolitan perspective. So water has to speak about future sustainability and also recycling waste. 13,000 tons every day are the result of the waste. And we want to cut that down to 50% of that figure. We have the methodology, we have great recycling plants, and so this is one of the most important topics, to have an environmental services that is better air, more water, less noise, and mobility. These are some of the most important topics we are working on, and of course, vis-a-vis economy, we want this to be a very prosperous city, shared prosperity, a city wherein to generate an income also means environmental responsibility, a city where we see that the best social program is employment, a job for people to have a good job, a city where we change the economy with new ruling axis, where we can have enough liberty for development, growth, economic investment in this city, and also a city of welfare, as we say, for the good of all. The poor go first. We say also that of the poor, women must be attended to first. I'd like to finish by welcoming you again. Go out, know our city, and let's have an exchange of experience. Let us have an excellent meeting. Greetings to Bloomberg, the team of Bloomberg, and all the mayors. Welcome to Mexico City.
Próxima estación, Zócalo.
Good morning. Welcome to Mexico City, everyone. We're so happy and proud to have you and to host you. I cannot be but thankful to Mayor Michael Bloomberg, to Patricia Harris, but especially to James Anderson for making this happen. I'm happy to be a part of this family. We have a fantastic, short, brief, but very intense panel with three amazing guests, Karina Arbizu, Rodrigo Rivero Borrell, and Alejandro Echeverri, who, although everyone was trained as an architect, each of us practice in a different way the ways of engaging innovation and the ways of engaging the city. So we'll hear perspectives of how through the work in academia, in public policy, in private-public partnerships, as individual developers, how do we address the challenges of our cities? And to take the quote, which reminded me of Patricia's introduction of our very good friend from the Urban Age Project, Ricky Burdett and Wolfgang Novak used to say that cities have a grammar of success. To replicate that grammar is fundamental to expanding our knowledge about good ideas and how to avoid failures. So without further ado, I'll open the floor, and I'd like to start with a question of how, through your each different platforms, have you approached the question of addressing innovation and how the Latin American city experience can relate to other cities? Karina.
Thank you so much, Jose. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for this space. And it's really nice for me to be just after Mayor Brugada because it's the perfect segue. I think that Latin American cities, what they are really doing, and we have to share this to the world, it's doing urbanism through the lenses of gender, and specifically taking into account all the care activities. And we have these examples that Mayor Brugada just mentioned that were done in Iztapalapa, you'll see afterwards. But also we see other in Bogota, for instance, with the care of blocks. And really putting into account the value of care activities and unpaid work that, for instance, in Mexico, they represent 24% of the national GDP. Just imagine all this care work that it's been done mainly by women and that affects women the most because they have like a double labor, sometimes in informal work, sometimes in formal work. And you know that Latin America is the most unequal region in the world. And I do believe that through the lenses perspective in urbanism, we can really tackle inequality in all its dimensions, really putting the lenses to all the reproductive activities. And this is done easily with care infrastructures, bringing care facilities close to where people need them, to where people are living, but also connecting them with good public transportation. So probably if you have the opportunity to go to some pilares in the north of the city, you will see that the cable cars are connected to the pilares, but also through territorial planning and housing. So proximity and mixed land uses.
Thank you, Karina. Rodrigo, your perspective of almost 20 years practicing as someone who deals in impact investment and addressing the questions of housing through development.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you very much for this invitation. Yeah, at Urbano, we've worked for 15 years trying to provide affordable or at least housing for people who live within the urban cores. We think that urban recycling is the better available resource for us to do environmental responsible investments in development, and through connecting different projects along a street or along a corridor, we make sure that we stay involved in neighborhoods for a longer period of time. We think of the neighborhoods and the communities as a strong, very relevant part of what we try to accomplish along our practice. And I think the real value or the real power lies in the collective action and in the actual capability that we have to trust each other and the means that we have to work together for a better outcome. I think we all have to take responsibility, and we have to be co-responsible for what gets built in our cities. And I think providing those opportunities and managing different entities and being kind of like a middleman trying to put everything in the table to make things happen is what actually adds more value to the discussion. As an architect trained developer, my father was also an architect. My family lived in a rent-controlled building in Colonia Juarez. So I know what affordability means and how much it can be changed for families like mine. So I think it's in our hands to make sure that we end up producing well-designed, well-located, and affordability housing for the people that would thrive in cities like ours. So we're happy to be here and address this with you guys.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Alejandro, you've had the opportunity to practice from many different fields and positions, from public official to consultant, from professor at Tec de Monterrey to Medellin. What can you tell us about this sense of innovation from a different perspective?
Yes, Jose, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to this panel. I will share 3 conclusions related with the questions. And so in my experience in Medellin and with other cities and in Mexico too, so the challenge of continuity and sustainability. Continuity, I'm sorry, does not exist in Latin America. So it's a challenge. So after have been working in many other cities and past 50, I realized that we had in Medellin at that time an exceptional moment. So first, some examples that we have, like the Botanical Garden, the Explora Park, the Moravia Cultural Center in the North Zone, share these lessons that belongs to previous histories, even below the government arrived to the government. So exist in different form, from the communities, from the science centers, from the universities, so from some institutional capacity in the private sector. So these histories that the governments could take and could implement and elevate and support has this possibility to create a sustainable processes too. And the design from the beginning is really important. So if you include a more diverse and powerful and robust agenda of actors from the beginning in a creative way, that gives and became and create a different ecology for the sustainability, and is really important. And this partnership between public, private, and local initiatives are really important in relation to keep those processes going on and in a more an ecology that could expand with different initiatives. So the local capacity to empower and to increase the local capacity after some years is really clear that those processes and those places that has this solid base has a more capability of replicability. So I really believe in the school of to increase the local capacity more than the school of mayors, if I could say. and the last thing is, I think in this moment of uncertainty and doubt, I'm sorry, my English sometimes is we need institutions that we could believe. So the role of the universities, private and public, and private is really important. And I really strongly believe in the capacity of the universities to become and to keep the questions on the table and to lead ethics and to lead processes and became a really important actors in the and we are, and I have the privilege today to work with the Tec of Monterrey in this some initiatives that because this university and others has the idea that has to help and to improve the Mexican city. So the role of the universities, because this lack of belief in many different public institutions, that they are really important. So I think the local governments has to, they have an important tool in the universities to explore different partnerships to improve the cities. Yeah.
Thank you, Alejandro. And to connect it to something that Clara says about kind of institutional redesign and how does the decisions we make impact the way citizens live the city, decide about the city. There's a kind of a common understanding that in Latin America, there's a combination of top-down and bottom-up. There's a dissolution of the public and the private notions of space. But there's even innovative ways of introducing the questions of affordability in housing. Maybe briefly you can talk even the questions of caring facilities and social infrastructure. Maybe briefly you can talk a little bit more about how from your different platform do you think other cities can learn from Latin America?
So in Latin America, regarding housing, there's been a lot of different experiences of urban upgrading. As you may know, we are the most urbanized region, and I think we can also share some experiences to Africa. And there's been like an evolution in all these approaches of urban upgrading, but lately, there's also been the gender lens through to tackle this. And I can mention an example in Argentina where the title deeds of the homes were given equally to men and women shared, just even if they were not legally married, for instance, like I'm talking about a heteronormative couple. But also these can empower women. And in Mexico, with the program, the social housing program at the federal level, we also did that. Most of the women were the beneficiaries of the program, having the titles of their homes. And these can really help reducing gender inequality and other inequalities, because in the framework of rights, I think the foremost right is right to care, to be cared, to take care, and for self-care. And that right can enable other rights. But housing, the right of adequate housing, it's the baseline also.
Okay, thank you, Karina. Brief ideas of...
Yes, thank you for the sake of the time. I think the power, again, lies in the collective capabilities that we have as developers, private institutions, financial institutions, government. We have to work together to make things happen. That's the only way, and when we come to the table with trust and transparency, it's much easier for us to make things happen. In terms of the cities, most of the people now in the world lives in cities, so I think we have to figure out how to build well-designed, well-located housing to actually tackle those challenges that we all face or you face as majors, as citizens, as developers, and I think there's a great opportunity for us to work together.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Alejandro.
Yes, I think in Latin America, in my experience, that you see that everything is in friction. No, you have all simultaneously the problems in a very specific condition, but together. You have the problems of risk management, the housing, the employment. So that context and reality force you to innovate. And it's an ideal space to innovate, not only for Latin American or Global South responses. It's to innovate in how you could manage those processes, how you articulate the knowledge of environment, the knowledge of infrastructure, the knowledge of process of participation. So this is an amazing opportunity, and we have a lot of interesting lessons. Some of them small, some of them became public policies. The challenge is the continuity, I must say, but this is an amazing space to innovate, and the creativity is really beautiful, yeah.
And to talk about continuity, and we need to move on, but we look forward to continuing the conversation in the multiple events of the day. I think the one big lesson this city has for the world is you'll be better off if you can elect 2 women mayors back to back. So, with that, thank you. We look forward to seeing you.
Okay, so let's dive into our conversation. Mayor Nirenberg, transit-oriented developments sound appealing. I mean, what's not to like? affordable housing, transit hub. So instead of giving us the pitch on why these projects are great, we would like to hear a little bit on what challenges do you face with those, and how have you managed to overcome those challenges?
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying that the obvious challenge in Texas for transit in a city that has never had transit before is political opposition. There's been a culture of cars developed, and we've had opportunities in the past to develop transit in our community. So overcoming that political opposition is number one. Number two is that San Antonio is a major city, big city, 1.5 million in the municipality, but it's very spread out, not dense, and the lack of density doesn't typically support mass transit. And so overcoming the density issue to really ensure that the transit system is serving ridership that would allow it to be successful is another challenge. And then the last one I would say is that to start a transit system in a city of 540 square miles is significantly expensive, lots of resources. And so we had to develop a system that would help overcome the expense of ensuring that the mass transit system would be big enough to support a population, but also reduce the costs to allow us to build it in the first place.
Gentrification can be a side effect of these projects. How can you limit that impact?
Sure, and that's where overcoming these obstacles is very important. So on the first one, I would say that, number one, we have a moment in time with bipartisan legislation passed where we have resources to build at scale. That's very important. The costs are also part of the opposition in the past, so overcoming that challenge is very important. But the issue of gentrification is of huge concern. And so that's where our efforts to reform zoning and land use regulations is so critically important. And what we've had done is start a transit-oriented development process to oversee and to reform all of our land use codes in the corridors that are going to have that mass transit system. And I remind people as we go through the community process, because involving community is critically important as we start to build out these plans, I remind people that at the intersection of transportation infrastructure, of housing, and of education is economic mobility, is our ability to fight poverty, to thrive as a community. And so ensuring that all of these systems are working together is our way that we can achieve success.
Washington, in Latin America and in many developing countries, we have this history of mistrust of the government. When they approach the communities with these projects that offer great solutions, there's this, because there's a long history of undelivered promises. Just in Rio, you have experience with Rio. I read a research note where the commute times of some favelas ended up increasing despite the big investments that there were around the Olympics on some of the most expensive projects of transportation for Brazil. How do you engage the community to win their trust and to put them in an open attitude for these projects where they are stakeholders but also supporters and promoters of it?
Yeah, thank you for that, Carlos. Yeah, it's a pressing issue, how to build trust during the process of urban development. Although I disagree a bit with your statement, because the Olympics were really important for the city of Rio. For the first time, we could achieve a network of mass transportation, allowing the city to connect different areas, different sectors. Historically, that was also a problem for the city. The city have two mountains and very complex sites, and also it was really important in changing the downtown area. So Olympics allowed the city to have a better infrastructure for transportation. During my time as the former head of the planning department in the city, and doing this special plan for the downtown area to fight against the vacant consequence of the pandemic, I decided to move to downtown. So I rent an apartment and I moved to there. It was a really important experience, expose myself as a bureaucrat to that local community, and also facing the things they face every day in the daily basis. So I could understand how that place work, but also the pains of the daily life of that community of not having good public service and also a private service. And I did that also when I did a master plan for Rio, also moving to the farthest neighborhood in the city. And it was, once again, really important when you realize that people have to wake up 3:30 a.m. in the morning to be at the train station at the 4 a.m. So you understand how this transit and the house allocation is really important. What we did in Rio at that time was really changing the urban regulation for the downtown area. You know, Carlos, the future historians, they are going to look for the period from the Spanish flu to the pandemic, to the COVID pandemic, and they will say, what the heck these guys did with their cities during the period. So we start to adopt this functional zoning. When you look to cities at the end of the 19th century, cities were much more mixed. People live in the up floors, in the market. We have this intense mix of views. And then we start to adopt this functional zoning. We start to telling people we should live there, we should work there, and we should commute, like a really smart decision. So that was the dumbest decision that we did for cities in that time. So we should find a way to move housing to where we already have transportation. That's the case of Rio's downtown. We are a 5-minute city in Rio's downtown, but we don't have people living there.
One of the challenges around irregular settlements is to attract, reward people for approaching regulation, for adapting to some of these rules and zoning rules that you are saying. In Brazil, in the favelas, they're experimenting with the community land trust. What can you tell us about this? Can this be a scalable solution that can be repeated in other cities, even in other continents?
Yeah, achieving property title is highly complex, also expensive for a city, in the city government, and also institutionally very complex. And in the new master plan of Rio, we decide to create for the second city in Brazil with this urban instrument, which is the community land trust. And it's a way to facilitate it, to have a fast process of land recognition in the community base. We should look to informal areas as a community effort to stay closer of opportunities. So we should also recognize that land tenure in the same process.
Mayor, I don't want to finish this conversation without touching on another big challenge that we hear, and it's a common denominator. It doesn't matter if it is about regulation via titles or a transportation hub, but whenever the concept of affordable housing comes in, there's this mentality of not in my backyard. Yeah. How do you deal with that? How, in a polarized world of politics, but also in social media being used as battlefield to oppose and resist to some of these projects that people say they love it, as long as it's not in my backyard. How do you face that?
I think the first thing is to anticipate that it will be there. Even if you believe that the progressive policy of transportation and mass transit is going to move your city forward, anticipate that there will be change and there will be resistance to that change. So involving community in the plans for land use and development for us was priority number one. And so we are now embarked on a strategic housing plan. We're about year 4 that ties land use to our transportation planning through a comprehensive map of the city. That map, I can go to those neighborhoods that give us pushback and say, this is the plan that you developed. Now, we do have some challenges with older neighborhoods that want to retain their historic character, and we can work with that. We can adjust for that. But the most important thing in developing these kinds of transformative models is to make sure that the community knows that they owned the process from the beginning.
We have 1 minute left, Washington. Going back to the concept of gentrification, there's also, even though it's always seen in a negative light, there's also a positive aspect. To some degree, it also means some progress for some particular areas. How do you define that limit, that line, where it's progress, but it's not really pushing out that cultural aspect that the mayor mentions?
Yeah, it's, I believe it's much better to deal with the problems of urban vitality than the problems of urban death. So in that sense, Gentrification, it's also a problem, but we should be obsessed by increasing the housing supply. And we should use all the tools that we have to do that. What we are doing now in Inter-American Development Bank in the CityLab, it's how to offer better data to measure and map informality in the region, in the Latin America and the Caribbean. We have 14% of the population live in informal settlements there. And also offering solutions to increase the quality of the co-creation of the population and cities in their cities, to really taking part also in the process of designing policies to increase housing supply.
Well, with that note, with becoming obsessed with increasing the supply of housing, I thank our panelists, and especially for your insights, and thanks to the audience for your attention.
Thank you. That was fast.
Próxima estación, Zócalo.
Muy buenos días. Es un gusto para nosotros recibirlos en Ciudad de México y contar con la presencia en este evento.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Mexico City. Pepe Merino, who is the head of the digital transformation in Mexico. He used to be here in Mexico City. Pepe, I'm so glad you're here with us. Your mission now is to be the leader, the first agency of digital transformation. Before that, you did that in Mexico City. Now it's all federal. Could you tell us about the project? The idea, the main idea, well, sometimes when you are late in arriving at some things, you have an advantage because you can learn from successful and not so successful previous actions. Something that was good for us was the model of public innovation for Mexico City, and in this case, for Mexico, the country, had to be based on different logics. First, it was to unify all the agenda from infrastructure, technological connectivity, centralization, and that creates an innovation ecosystem that helps you use public resources more efficiently. Well, nothing to do with unification, I guess, and it is a model of self-provision. Instead of managing private resources, it was our idea to have technological innovations within the government that meant having a software. It is a software creation model. This is a model for the city which we are implementing. Third, instead of having as a basis something ridiculous, one has to look at the experience in the rest of the world. Cities with a higher level of resources, we see that in Mexico City it has 9 million inhabitants by night and 15 million inhabitants by day. So things have improved in some cases, but there's still many problems. What we think is let's have a list of the problems that may be faced, and based on that we can start thinking of technological solutions. If you start the other way around, and when, as they say in the USA, when you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. So we have to have specific problems of a city like Mexico City. Finally, a topic of access. One of the slogans of the president and I also belong is for the good of all, let's have the poor first. first. So those who suffer most in their daily interaction with their governments, those who invest the most time, money, resources to have access to some formalities are those who are poorer. So the volume of interaction of those who require the government most, one is not doing what we consider should be the public technology. Public technology for us is an empowering thing of rights for public services, education, health. We have to remember that every interaction with the government opens up a door. You cannot get your birth certificate just because you want to have a copy of that. You have to take that to the school for your registration at school. So there is a consequence of the government procedures that open up a door for people regarding prosperity. Now, your plan will now be at the national level. What is happening? We believe that the model, and I am humble about it, we believe that that model was successful and that it has now begun to be copied in other parts of the country and of the region. So we have to say that even though Mexico City is enormous, it's huge, we have to show that the model can be sustainable and can be copied. And in that sense, telecommunications and digital solution is following these four principles. They are unifying some agendas under the same institutional, so also to give solutions for the citizens under cybersecurity. There will be a public cybersecurity to guarantee the security of the data, to unify all the facilities installed, the software manufacture, a national policy of spectrum to guarantee the coverage and the competence in the private provision, but also the public provision in Mexico. Internet access is a right, and so it is a right in Mexico City also, so that the Internet is just something that facilitates a right. The President of Mexico has spoken about free internet in Mexico, but also for strategic services of the government. Simplification, we want to reduce 50% of the number of formalities one has to go through, and to have at least 80% of all of the services available in a digital manner. Digitalization, that is all the re-engineering of processes, of formalities, the public purchase of technology that guarantees interoperability to and also, of course, austerity, not to spend resources in an unnecessary manner, a service of citizens' attention that it will be 24 hours a day, so that everybody in the country know that they can just dial one number and there will be a solution for all the formalities they have to face. and also data intelligence as an area of services, some counseling of the government that includes open data, geospatial data, and of course analytical tools such as in artificial intelligence algorithm, and to increase their use in the tax payment, such as in customs. This administration will try to accompany not only through a passcode, but also all the institutional capacities that must go together with this process. And then we will have a national school for public officers that at all levels of government there will always be officers capable of maintenance and to guarantee the non-obsolescence. It's a very ambitious agenda, but we have the support of the President of Mexico, and we have the experience that we acquired when we were in Mexico City. We hope this will be okay. Thank you very much, Pepe, for telling us about all these projects. I'm sure that everybody will be very happy to continue seeing what's happening in that field.
Bueno, este panel es muy... Me entusiasma mucho porque se habla y leemos...
In this, I am very enthusiastic. We speak a lot of the theory on recovering the public space, but not so much in practice. We will speak about how to do it in practice. Roman was in the agency, the public agency, having to design urban spaces in Mexico City. Roman, tell us about this program to improve the urban design. Well, the program has three elements, and the planning, the ordering, territorial ordering, and then it came down at the local level. Significant data of the planning that we had in the previous administration. 43% of municipal, state, and regional programs of urban design were used, and we worked mainly on the center and south of the country. We're speaking of the Maya train, the Tehuantepec Isthmus, the new international airport, Felipe Ángeles. Those are the elements that will generate a better economy, because there's going to be markets, primary schools, high schools, universities, health clinics, public sports spaces. This was done at the national level. In general terms, we could reach almost 1,300 public spaces in the more marginal areas in Mexico. And this was also, we had 400,000 housing actions, practically 100,000 housing was properly titled. And as we can see, these run along the great infrastructure projects. In this case, two of them are the corridors of the Maya train and of the Tehuantepec Isthmus. there's a regional development. What was the purpose of the program? To be able to have basic infrastructure equipment in those neighborhoods that have many problems. They don't have water, they have no pavement, and the program was concentrated or focused on the public space. This is the most significant infrastructure. And this is the basis of the program. You worked with 7 projects, Fernanda. Yes, I did. Tell us, what were those projects like? 7 projects developed in 2 areas, in Sonora and in Agua Prieto. That's a desert part of the thousands of projects. And they make up different public spaces. They may be sports centers, they may be houses for the elderly, or yes, it's the wall, right? Because this is Douglas, Arizona, and this side in Mexico. There are people crossing, many people a day are crossing there. They had nothing, absolutely nothing. It was quite impressive during the pandemic. There's a linear park. The library was the closest point to the crossing. This was like the backyard of a very violent relationship with the wall. We had to change this. We went as close as possible. The idea was to, how could you change a place that is characterized by violence and poverty, to give it its own identity, to break away from this feeling of distance. And so we went as close as possible to turn the wall into a place, a library, but he who does not go there because they cannot read, they don't know how to read, and they just need to go to the bathroom. So yes, this is connected to 2 kilometers, and it's also linked to a sports area. The idea, as you can see it, is always to look across the other side, and for the community to be able to look at itself. These places, these super horizontal constructions, and for the first time they can look at themselves, to have a new sense of identity. And we always used local materials. The priority, of course, is security, where everything is visible. There's no need for air conditioning. The market is always open, and it's excused to be able to look across to the other side of the border. Yes, symbolism is incredible of these projects. What was the impact on the community? Well, they have become places where they can go out onto the street, because there were no pavement, there were no street. It's not only to build a building, but to build a community. As you can see, it's layers and layers and layers of a social work, a community work, and people are now the owners of that, because you have concerts, you have all kinds of the house for the elderly, it's for the older and the younger, it's for every age, and one has to generate public, safe, open spaces. What was it like to work with architects such as Fernanda? What was the interaction like well, 1 year before there was this big, enormous machine working there. This was the border with the U.S., and there is a methodology. One has a set of questions and questionnaires, and then you have a master plan and define the priorities based on a determined amount of resources, amount of money. And then one has to link with community organizations who have worked with what is public, architects like that. And when the architectonic plan begins, there is a feedback, a very fluid feedback, so that within 3 months we can go to a plan that is execution. What does it mean to recover these public spaces? For somebody who is at the border, looks at that very violent wall. These are all in residual spaces. There was not the idea of looking at just the land. One had to find the right place to do it and to connect with something that was already existing there, perhaps a baseball park. And the library for people who perhaps will never use it, but who would like to use the public space downstairs, go to the bathroom, have a place to sit down. And also people who might not do any sports, but it's a place where on Sunday you go for a walk. It's a good excuse to transform the site and to change it. You had 1,700, 1,300 projects. What is your favorite? There are several in Tijuana and along the border with the United States. And then speaking of the Ajico, this has been broadly accepted by the community. Every day the mothers go and clean that area. They appropriate that area, that space. It's the value added of architecture. Architecture, when it has a value added in the public space, can add something of the appropriation by the communities. And many a time, not only here in the border with the United States, but also in Tapachula and other areas of Mexico, they generate a sense of identity, of pride. And is there any common element for these 1,300 projects? Yes, the architectural design. We can have previous research, and then quality is a way of ensure them that there is greater possibility of success for them to stay on in the next years. Fernando, what did you learn in these areas? I learned a lot how to make it so that buildings have some lasting period. You cannot foresee what is happening, because now when you build at a distance, it's very, very hot and also very, very cold, and the workers who at the end of the day learn how to do something, they leave and they are not working in the project anymore. So there's a set of complex things. So the idea is what happens if you don't have much supervision? What happens if there are no conditions? What is happening in the future? A change of the administration. Well, for instance, we built an auditorium Instead, it's an open space. Instead of closing it, it's almost like a square. And the excuse is to build some public toilets and for them to be interpreted and changed with time. You have many architects here. You have many mayors here. Would you give them an advice as to how to do the recovery of public space? Our advice, what I have learned in these years, is to work in the territory. The public policy can deviate, but when you go out in the field, 70% of my time I will not stay in the office, but I will go to the territory. I think it's one of the very important clues as a public officer to always be outside in the territory. That gives you the feeling that you are doing things right. Oh, me too. Work for the community. The client is the one who uses something, not the one who pays for something.
All right. Hello. I am so happy to be here in Mexico City, which is honestly one of my favorite places to eat in the entire world. And I am here with two chefs who I really admire because they do so much more than just cook. They are using food to preserve and promote local traditions, build up their communities, and really solve tangible social issues within the cities that they are in. I want to start with you, Manu. You put Curitiba sort of on the culinary map. You could have opened your restaurant anywhere in Brazil and honestly the world. Why did you open in Curitiba? And then talk to me about the kind of impact a restaurant can have on a city, and particularly a city that is not a major urban center of a country.
Well, I believe Curitiba chose me and I chose Curitiba. It's a great place, and it's really involved with sustainability. And it's the same size as a big city. It's a big city, but it's local products, and a lot of invest in urban gardens. So today it's a huge opportunity for the community, and I always believe that restaurant can impact. It doesn't matter the size of the restaurant, but how can we impact? How can we share our knowledge as a chef with information and education to the city? You know, this, I think, sharing is the most important thing that we have, and all the learning that we have through the food, because food can connect people, can connect us back to the lands, and can connect the city to the restaurant. I believe it doesn't matter the size of the restaurants, doesn't matter if they are in the city or in the countryside, but it's our job as a chef or working side by side with public politics. And I think we can solve many problems as hunger, as how we can share that information about food, how we can make the people eat better, how can understand their body. And I think this is a job, not just mine, but I think the city. So Manu is supposed to be just a small restaurant, but became really big because I want to share. I want to bring back everything that I want as a word, as having a microphone, having a stage, using my life and my knowledge as an example to the city, to the people who live in Curitiba. And I think this is something that I truly believe.
Fatmata, you were born and raised in Sierra Leone, and you have this really amazing pop-up series where you showcase your Fulani heritage. Why do you feel like it is important to sort of preserve and promote that heritage, and sort of what do you see as the biggest goal of your dinner series?
Thank you, Pia. So for me, even though I grew up in Freetown, Sierra Leone,
my food and connection with the Fulani tribe shapes me a lot because it transcends beyond one city. The Fulanis are nomads, and that spirit drives my approach and connection with food because it's more than the ingredients. It's about the journey. It's about the traditions, the connections also between communities, and also the core principles of sustainability. At Dine on a Mat, our main goal is to create vibrant dishes and also inspire, change through food, because the restaurant serves as an invitation for our guests to step outside of their comfort zone and explore flavor and sustenance through the palates of women in rural areas. So for me, it's very important to tell these stories, preserve culture, and also promote African gastronomy and spark conversation beyond local communities.
What kind of change do you think that a person sitting at a dinner like this can spark?
A lot, because one, there's something powerful about dining on the floor.
Yeah.
It makes you, release your guard. It doesn't have all these dining etiquettes, the pressure of Western dining etiquette, because you sit on pillows, you wash your hands in calabash, which is a sustainable bowl. Yeah. You eat with your hands, and we tell stories through food. And there is always that natural way to connect with people by passing the bowl to the next person. It's more than a dining experience, and it makes you focus on what truly matters, which is the flavor of the food and the shared experience.
Do you feel like the heritage of Fulani cooking is at risk of being lost without the work of people like you?
Yes, it is, because if you look at dining now, there's a huge shift because of urbanization, globalization, and indigenous food systems are under siege also with the forces of globalization, right. Environmental degradation, and all of this. So it's really important for me to share these stories, bring these women along by telling their stories through food, because food is the easiest way to connect with people.
Right.
It's a declaration of love. It's the one thing that really connects us. So I really think it's fading away. People are doing grab and go now. Most people don't even have time to cook food at home. And I see the mat as a way to create space for people to reflect on how we eat, and a way for us to go back also in times, and so we can create a renewed relationship with our food culture and connect deeper.
I feel like if there's anything you take away is that a restaurant is not just a restaurant. A restaurant can be so much more. And Manu, your restaurant is the perfect example of that, because you work with the city to transform vacant lots into community gardens. You also have started a food distribution project in Curitiba. And I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that work, how it's played out, the impacts, the challenges. And then the last thing I'll ask you is how the kinds of projects that you've implemented can be replicated in other cities.
So it wasn't easy, because we started the foundation 7 years ago. And I really want to do something. And we started as really small. And the first project I worked with the city was the urban gardens. Curitiba today has a beautiful projects, urban gardens, that we as an institution went to the gardens, helping and teach them that's not just broccolis, but that new way, and some vegetables and fruits that is native from Brazil, and that is more proteins, like the beans, like the chickpeas. So we starting to get involved and decide with working with them. Today they have 120 urban gardens around the city. And they have to do their own compost. And then we have the farm, the urban farm. It's like a university inside of the city, but the people can go in. They have a lot of courses that they can do. And besides that, we did this beautiful project that called Alimenta Curitiba, in English, Feed Curitiba. It's we have four times in a year. The big one is gonna happen now in December. We choose a community that needs us, and then we implement, we go in the community and then research what they need from us. Sometimes it's cooking classes, teaching them like a recipe. We did a book last year in one community that we're going to share with them how to use the whole products, the whole vegetables, how you can use lemon to produce like a soap. And, so we get into the community to understand. And after the event, it's like 2 days event, we have this beautiful box, like 7 kilos, with all the things that they needed, because we do a research before. And then we have many projects inside of the foundation, but the ones that we work side by side with the city is these two. And now we are getting a new one, working just for a woman. It's a school we call Flying Butterfly. It's going to be starting in February. We work with the woman to get the power of them, because when you cook, you have the power to transform. And most of them, they are immigration. They come from other countries, Haiti, Venezuela, Bolivia. And we are starting a school, teach them to get a new job, to get the power of the family, to get more money, and then to teach their kids how to eat better, how they can provide better health. So this is kind of the work we do with them. And I believe, of course, Manu starting the work as a restaurant, but became really big because we care. We care about the city, we care about the community. And it's not just about the restaurant, but it's about the change. What do you want for the future of the city?
I think what you all are doing is really amazing. And I think a lot of communities have ideas to do community gardens, to distribute food. But it is very hard to do that at scale and in a way that will have a tangible long-term impact. How have you all been able to do that?
Of course, it's not just me. I have like a group of girls and guys who help us. So we started, and it's funny because when we create the foundation, none of them has to be with foods. Like the president of our foundation is working in the education department. And the vice president, she works as an engineer. She's a CEO in an engineer company. And all the girls who is in the picture, they are in different parts, but together, we want to make the difference. And so this is projects we connecting people. I believe you don't need to become big, but you can connect people, you can make the connection, and then you can create something amazing. Of course, the project that Flying Butterfly, I starting develop with them, but I'm not involved in. I just connecting a really amazing girl who is working in education with just a woman, the immigration department of the city, and they became bigger, but we connected, and we used our foundation to help them with the money, with the company, to develop the projects. I believe this is the word, It's not mine, but it's for the people to the city, and this is the word that we always use, is connection.
You've done such a good job really empowering other people to feel like this is my project too. Everyone sort of feels like it's ours. On that note, Fatmata, I really I really admire the work that you do, particularly because it speaks to something I believe very strongly, which is, when it comes to tackling big issues like climate change, we often are looking forward to, advanced technology, but not often looking to the indigenous communities who have had a lot of these best practices long before, we were alive. And I feel like this is something that you do. You have helped put Fonio, a grain, on the culinary map. I'm wondering if you could talk about the importance of including indigenous traditions and communities in conversations about climate and broader social issues.
It's very important because I believe Africa itself is a diverse ritual of indigenous food systems, and these systems holds invaluable knowledge that could be passed down through generations. And now we are talking about climate change, food insecurity, loss, all of it, hunger. When we have this knowledge, it's just there, within reach. It's really about just collaborating. Because one thing I've learned spending time in these communities, because it started from going there for inspiration, and then the foundation was born through that. And women and people in rural communities, they don't do contracts. They believe in trust, word of mouth. Like when you say something, if I'm going to buy a bag of fonio or a bag of rice, you show up when you say that.
Yeah.
And then from there, building that trust for me, it was important to also bring in people who can do the heavy lifting. So most of my collaboration is with FAO, which is Food and Agriculture of the United Nations, because they do the technical side. I'm just a chef who is passionate and who is trying to be conscious day by day. And we've been able to train like 100 women recently how to grow fonio, also package it well, place value, and we are trying to also tackle the 4 betters, which means better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life. Because we have all these sustainable grains, but the problem is they are still stuck in the traditional ways of processing it. As much as the indigenous food systems and some of the best traditional practices are good, but some things you have to innovate for it to thrive. So I've been able to bridge between preserving tradition and best practices and also creating space for innovation, which is like mechanization.
Yeah.
Because the women are growing fonio, but the reason why it hasn't taken off, because it's very tedious to process. They still stamp on it to process here, so you need to scale. So that's where people like the FAO, the UN Tourism, they come in, and then they help, like the Basque Culinary Center, which she's a jury, so she's part of the judges. They've been also very supportive in helping me, ease that burden and also inspire the women that what they have is so valuable and it's scalable.
The last thing I want to ask, because we are in this room full of policymakers, and food may not feel like an obvious connection, but I think that food can be an incredibly valuable tool to affect social change in a way that other things cannot. And I'm wondering if each of you quickly can talk about, the value that food can bring in terms of bringing about sustainable long-term change in communities.
Okay. I believe food is universal language. It is, we all know that. It's a bridge. It's the easiest way we can connect. And I believe it can be used as a tool for change. Years back, I was not serving, basically, because I come from Fulanis, which we have our issues as much as we contribute in good ways to the biodiversity, because we are nomads, we are crossing borders, so we have challenges with farmers. And I remember I used to use my dinner as a means to host like peace dinners between farmers and Fulani people who were having cattle farm invasion. So for me, I've seen that. I'm from Sierra Leone. I went through civil war, and food was our only ally during those dark days, in Freetown, Sierra Leone. So in a nutshell, food is powerful. It's a bridge and can connect us if it's used properly.
Manu, what do you think?
Well, of course, I'm going to use all the words that she said. It's for me too, but just use an example as my country. Like Brazil is an immigration country. And if you go to New York, as an example, Paris, or even Brazil, you see the only thing who connected when you leave your country and then you decided to call home another country, what do you bring with you? Food.
Yeah.
We can see the restaurants all over New York. You can eat in New York all over the country. You can find even Kazakhstan restaurants, I know, in Brooklyn, but because the restaurant and the food connect you back from your roots.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I want to do, how food is power, how can, connect you back to something that you love.
And even as chefs.
Yes.
We're all connected to food,
Thank you both so much, and thank you so much
for being
here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Priya. Thank you.
Good morning. Cities, of course, are vital and complex organisms constantly in flux, changing shape with new technologies, shifting demographics, climate change, and, of course, new ideas, some of them revolutionary. Artists and architects can, and many do, play visionary roles interpreting those constant changes, and also many of them affecting profound changes themselves. We're going to be talking about transformation with two of the most creative people in Mexico City, in Mexico actually, and even beyond, who take things as they are and have historically been and transform them into things radically quite different and exciting. Enrique, you have used architecture as your medium for urban transformation. Tell us about one of those projects, the Amparo Museum, and how you transformed that existing space into something really radically different, but yet respecting its cultural tradition and what it had been before.
Thank you very much. I'd be happy to. The Amparo Museum is located in Puebla, in the city of Puebla, which is I consider one of the hidden treasures of our country. It's a wonderful city. It's the downtown of Puebla is protected by UNESCO, but also by our Institute of Anthropology. And we were invited to work on this project by the Amparo Foundation, who had put together already 7 different buildings of different times in history, with different qualities, but all charged with tremendous history and tradition. Our role was to organize differently these buildings, articulate all of these buildings, transform it into a new condition and new spaces that would help the museum both be able to show their array of collections. They have 4 very important collections, and reutilize a building or a series of buildings that are part of the heritage of the city of Puebla and of the region. So there's basically 2 important ideas here. One, from a sustainability point of view, you reutilize both the materials and the energy that has been spent for many centuries, I would say, in that same site. So you use that energy, you use that materials, but on the other hand, all of that is highly loaded of history and tradition. So you also rescue and use as a base for the future what we have already learned from many centuries. And with this last slide, you can see where both contemporary architecture and the traditional architecture come together and establish a new dialogue and look forward to a new condition of a city based on its own history. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's been my privilege to go to Puebla, and I urge all of you to do that, particularly with that extraordinary museum. Pedro, you conjure new life from existing material through sculpture and as a means to enhance a city. Tell us how you transform, remarkably, weapons into new structures that are actually life-enhancing, if not life-creating.
Thank you, Elliot. Well, you know, I like using this concept of society, which is the art of healing society. And what I do with that is, you know, like taking weapons. We do gun buybacks, where it's a coming together of private companies who provide gift cards that can be traded for guns, and these guns are then melted and made into shovels to plant trees. We transform 1,500 guns into 1,500 shovels, and we planted 1,500 trees. And then we started to come up with more ideas on how to do that. For instance, we took 7,000 weapons, and we decided to make musical instruments with them. I have here what used to be a rifle, and a rifle, like a shotgun or any kind of long gun, has been engineered to kill or to produce harm. And by drilling holes in this object, now it's a flute. And we made hundreds of instruments that are played by local orchestras and that travel from one place to the other. And this is a process of changing the polarity of an agent of death into an agent of life, because the element continues to exist, but now instead of, like if I had said, like, I have a gun, you would like kind of be scared. But now this gun produces music. So is this social sculpture, because the social sculpture is a concept where part of what your sculptures give form to materials. And here the material is society, like kind of a social relationship. So it's how do you take different elements from government to private companies to the civic society and make a new kind of a contract with these parts to produce change.
It's really remarkable. Unfortunately, we don't have time for a flute concert, but you get the idea. And if you get a chance to read more, you'll see these extraordinary shovels and the life that they generate. Just quickly, you each come to transformation in compelling but very different ways. The leaders in this audience are also not necessarily artists, but they transform cities. And they try to do so, and most of them very creatively as well. What insight would you offer them as artists, architects, as to that creative spirit that they can apply in what they do to transform cities into better living organisms?
Yes, thank you, Elliot. In a nutshell, I would say transformation is also change. So the first thing is do not fear change. Change is good. The second thing that I would say is that every city in the world has a tremendous stock of built material. Not all of the material is excellent, not all of it is good, but there's tremendous energy already spent in all of that. So our task is to understand what we have and not preserve what we have, but change what we have. And adapt it into the contemporary conditions of this moment in time.
But not necessarily destroying it while you're
No. It's using what you have and then transforming it and inventing a new opportunity for those same, not only buildings, but also public space, nature, everything.
Even spaces are objects that might have a negative connotation today or aren't working, you think can be transformed in positive ways?
Yeah, it's a case-by-case thing, but I think we should try to take whatever we have and transform it into a very new condition that will help us articulate differently our places, our cities, and our quality of life.
Pedro.
Well, I think that, oftentimes, wherever you go in the world, there will be a lot of talk about technology, but not all problems are to be solved by technology. There's a lot of moments where you actually, and we're starting to learn that in education, or nutrition, in many things where less technology is better. How do we take our eyes out of the screen because we're so addicted to it? It's like, these machines are producing this addiction. So encounter spaces where you meet face-to-face are now a new concept of quality of life. And this is where the arts can help, to bring community together. Because, as much as we have this sort of connecting now with all these technologies, we also need to have real space and real time with others. And that's, when all these cultural expressions and architecture and real space come to help. So I believe that it's very, very important to also think in this humanistic approach.
So space for human connection and not necessarily technological distraction as well. We just have a minute, a parting thought of any kind of inspiration either of you would like to offer, if you can't play the flute for us.
Well, you know, like the thing about we have this problem of guns in a community, and less guns are always correlated with less deaths. So sometimes the approach is to say, we need more police, more cameras, more security. But you know, like you can start with the kind of a very, very concrete agent that causes the deaths, and by trying to remove this element from a community, you will see a kind of a concrete result. So that's why, you know, like we work on these constant gun buyback programs.
Well, as everyone in this audience knows, that message is one that Mike Bloomberg in particular personally understands deeply. Enrique, a final thought?
Well, I would go back and say it's an initial thought, where I want to take these few seconds to thank Mayor Bloomberg. I don't know if he's here, but he'll always be my mayor, and we consider him mayor of mayors. And I would like to thank Patty Harris, a dear friend of mine, for bringing this to Mexico, and the Aspen Institute and yourself for allowing us to have this wonderful conversation.
Thank you. We're very lucky you're a citizen both of New York and of Mexico City. And we're all benefiting from their inspiration. And I now would like to thank you all for being with us at the morning plenary. And we'll see you again in various activities between now and when we return here at 3 o'clock. Enjoy the rest of the day.